It could be kind of a nod to the fact that in the 70s Spider-Man comics, Doc Ock and Aunt May actually had a relationship. They got married, it was weird. But since this Aunt May seems pretty involved in Peter's tech, maybe she used to work with Olivia, like in R&D or in engineering, maybe a kind of mentor figure. One of my favorite details that I spotted in the first breakdown, when Miles throws a bagel at one of the pursuing Alchemax scientists, when it hits him in the head, it makes the action word bagel. But listening to it again, they also slipped in this awesome sound effect.
All right, time to swing, just like I
I guess bagels do have a lot of gluten. Spider-Gwen recaps her backstory, and we see the moment she lands in Times Square. Now, I already pointed out most of the sign, billboard, Easter eggs, but this angle shows us another, Backrub. Backrub was the original name for Google, and that's why it's in Google's multicolored font. You can also see Pickaboo, which I pointed out before is this universe's Snapchat, but I didn't realize that Snapchat's original name was actually Pickaboo. Also in Times Square, later Spider-Man Noir sees a sign for an EA water polo game. Now, they meet up with Aunt May and head down into the lab, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that I pointed out, but one new detail, Peter's weight bench. So many weights. That's probably a joke about Peter B. Parker's comparatively slouchy figure, but notice how the weights say Marvel on them. Could also be a joke about how the Marvel Cinematic Universe heroes have to get ridiculously jacked to play the roles. And of course, there's a ton of different Spider-Man suits on display. I ran through them before, but one that I missed is the Electro suit. That's to the left of the main suit that Miles looks at. Now, jumping ahead to when all the spider people end up fighting Fisk and his goons as the collider goes haywire, there's a few interesting new details that I spotted here. One of the alternate dimension set pieces that floats through the particle stream is this thing. This is from the movie Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. It's the food weather machine that Flint builds.
Or for short, the Flintstone.
Limited officer?
Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs was, of course, another animated feature from producers Phil Lord and Chris Miller, and they actually brought that movie's VFX supervisor, Danny Dimian, and art director Michael Krinsky, who played these roles on Spider-Verse, too. This whole chaotic finale feels like something directly out of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Also, notice when Spider-Man Noir fights Tombstone, all of his action words are old-timey expressions like applesauce. And in the showdown with Miles and Kingpin, I pointed out before how there appeared to be some Daredevil imagery, as a nod to Kingpin's role as the villain to Daredevil in addition to Spider-Man. He's the New York villain. But when the train they're on passes through the particle stream, Fisk sees his wife and son again alive in these alternate dimensions that they're flying through. And he could see lots of interesting variants flash through, including Vanessa and Richard having grown older, and ones in which they're different races. And one of the flashes of this train include Japanese kanji lettering on the wall, suggesting that these could be Fisk's family in Penny Parker's universe. But most interestingly, one version shows his son dressed up as Matt Murdock, with the suit and the sunglasses. So maybe this could be a hint to Fisk's complicated relationship with Murdock, seeing him as a son figure. But I want to jump back to that shot of Miles as he gazes at the Spider-Man suit in the lab. Notice how his reflection lines up to make him look like he's too short to fill in that suit. Because in this scene, we learn he's not yet ready to become Spider-Man. But later, when he returns to this lab, having changed, his reflection now lines up perfectly in the mask, as he's ready to bear this responsibility. This victorious moment was foreshadowed by Stan Lee himself earlier, with a seemingly throwaway joke.
It always fits. Eventually.
But this guardian angel was exactly right. And to emphasize this transition from humiliating defeat to proud victory for Miles, all of his big power moves in the final act of the film are restaged versions of moves that he learned throughout his journey. Like, notice how his leap of faith off the skyscraper is now inverted to look like he's rising. And he's able to let go of the glass, despite his past anxiety would force him to stick to things. Now he's totally relaxed. He's got Sunflower playing in his head on repeat. And now he swings up with a cheer, woo, following him up compared to the scream, ah, following him down in his fall earlier. Rather than smacking into the pole, he now uses a pole to propel himself up. And this parallel victory lap continues in the collider sequence. He swings in sync with Peter once again, just like they did earlier in the trees. And to prove to Peter that he's got this, Miles sweeps a leg and grabs him by the chest, perfectly replicating Peter's move on him earlier. And when he goes off to face Kingpin alone, his moves are an exact callback to the badass bravery that he saw from the first Spider-Man of this universe, the one who died. He clings to the rising turbine, he swings around in a backflip, and he lands upside down on the ceiling. All this is to show that this is a Spider-Man who doesn't exist in a vacuum, one who lucked into his powers by accident. His rise feels so powerful and heroic,